We're going to get this meeting started. I'm calling this meeting to order. It's a tax increment reinvestment zone number 1. It's 2:34 p.m. We are at City Hall, Council Chambers, 1110 Houston Street. I want to thank everybody for being here, board members, staff, city staff, our consultants, guests that are here today. Thanks for making time to join us. If everyone would please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Should you roll call for us?
Yes, Mr. Heather, Mr. Martinez,
Present.
Mr. Castillo,
Present.
Mr. Ceballos,
Here.
Ms. Alexander, and Mr. Navarro.
Here.
And we do have a quorum today.
All right, we do have a quorum. Thank you very much for that. Item 4 is minutes, approval of minutes of June 13, 2023. Those are in your packets for your review. I will entertain any action on those once you have an opportunity to make any notes or review, complete your review.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no corrections by any of the board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 13th, 2023.
It's been moved by
Second.
Mr. Navarro, seconded by Mr. Castillo. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None, motion passes. Item 5 is citizens' comments. Citizens are required to fill out a witness card no later than 2:45. Those can be found here at City Hall chambers. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. No more than 3 persons will be allowed to speak on any side of an issue. Speakers may not pass their minutes to any other speaker. Comments should be relevant to city business and delivered in a professional manner. No derogatory remarks will be permitted. I don't have any signed up cards, so I don't think we have anybody.
At the moment, we don't have any
Okay,
comments.
thank you very much. We're going to move on to presentation items. No action to be taken on these items. Item 6, discussion on any downtown-related effort or activity of board members' interest or concern. Are there any topics that the board wants to discuss as a presentation? Not hearing any, we'll move on to item 7, administrative status update on ongoing work items included listed items below. So this is a generic list that we've kind of kept the same. Somebody contacted me about being concerned if they needed to be here with a presentation from the risk group, and I told them, well, it's just an update. I know you're still waiting on a response from USDA. So I just want to make that statement. I know sometimes we get inquiries, but I'll ask Rick Solis to start with the update.
Yes, good afternoon, members of the TERS board. Rick Solis with Able City. I know we've been we sort of have this running list, and sometimes we have updates and sometimes we don't have any new updates. I will just briefly touch on the fact that we do have for you all today. Over the past month, we did meet with the mural subcommittee team, and then we had a subsequent meeting with the council member to go over some more, trying to get a better direction on the mural process and how we wanted that to go. So we have a brief presentation on sort of what came out of that meeting for you all today. We also did spend some time with our design team working through the finalizing the civil plans. We did have another meeting with the fire department. The fire department is here today. If you have any questions for them, we did have a very good meeting. This was on Friday, I believe it was. We did touch on a couple of issues that they had some concerns, but we think that they're workable, and so we'll want to review that with you as well. And then we also have our proposed layout for the parking around Center for the Arts, and we want to discuss that as well. I don't know. Were we able to talk to traffic? No? Okay. I was just checking to see if we were trying to organize a meeting with the traffic director, but I don't believe that occurred subsequent to that. So I can go through this presentation now, or we can go through it when you all go into the action items. I don't know how you all want to handle it.
Okay, anything new on the other items that are listed?
No, on the other items, I don't have any updates.
Okay, all right. Any questions for Rick or the team? All right, if there's none, we'll move on to action items. Thank you, Rick. Item 8, update presentation and discussion with possible action related to the TERS number 1 ongoing Phase 1 improvement design work in coordination with City of Laredo departments as may be required or requested by the design team. Again, this is a standing item. I added the coordination item with the City of Laredo because I know part of what's remaining is to work out all the tweaks that we need to make it work for the different stakeholders, including the fire department. I know there's a huge interest in making sure we coordinate with the utilities department so that we are not tearing up what we just built. So that's going to be very important. We talked about how we engage that department further, right? So you all let us know, if you think it's already happening or if we need to set up a separate meeting, we can also do that.
Mr. Chairman, just to let you know, I did attend a meeting with the fire department and Edward Ochoa and Rick in the capacity as the planning director, but I was also there to
Great.
just listen to what they were talking about.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, board members, Edward Ochoa with KCI. We can go ahead and go through, we've got a couple updates that I guess I can show you and kind of go through. So we've been working over this time, as we continuously do, tweaking some of our design concepts to get down to, something finalized as we get comments from different areas. As was previously mentioned, we did have a meeting with Chief Hurd and Chief Dominguez, and they're at their office on Friday. It was a very good, very productive meeting. We got some input from them that allowed us to kind of come back and look at our design. Generally, what we got is, they've got their aerial ladder truck that we've talked about that maneuvers in certain areas downtown. So we need to be considerate of their maneuverability. The one thing that we kind of agreed on, I believe, is that generally at the intersections, if we can somehow make the intersection, the roadway and the sidewalk area to be level, so that if they do have to drive over what would be a curb, there would not be a curb there. We did express to them that we are using that concept at several intersections already. And so we are looking at that and tweaking it up, and I'll discuss one of the intersections here in a minute. But what we did leave off on was, they had gone out to the field and kind of ran another truck analysis at some of the intersections. So they're a little bit concerned about where their truck turns and lies. And obviously, when you go out there today, you don't see where the new curb is going to be. So they're trying to take measurements and all of that to try to analyze themselves. What I had suggested at our meeting on Friday was, let's take an opportunity to get the truck out there again, and I can survey with our survey equipment. I can go and essentially stake out where that line would be, the proposed line. And that'll give us a pretty good approximation of where it would be in the future. And then, they can make their maneuvers and we can see, is it really an issue for us or we have to change our design, or they can see where the curb is going to be and maybe they're good with it. So we agreed to do that, and I just visited with Chief Dominguez a minute ago before the meeting, and we've got some tweaks that we're doing to our design. We're going to prepare for next week to schedule some time to go to the field and do that iteration. I think that one last iteration would get them to feel very comfortable with the design that we want to present physically in the field. We kind of all feel it, see where it's at. And it helps us too, because then we can get an idea of, we're running a truck analysis using some software that we have available to us on our design program. But, we're not sure if that's exact, right? I mean, it's a software, it's an analysis. So we're going to cross-check each other. So we're looking at doing that for next week. So that's kind of our update on the fire department. It was a very productive meeting, and we appreciate the fire department giving us their feedback. So,
are you going to run through the areas, or can I make? I'd like to make a few comments, unless you're going to focus on the fire department area that are the areas that you're working on them with.
So I'm going to run through just one area that we're focusing on right now, and I'm going to discuss a little bit more about it. But
No, I was just gonna say that, and thank you, Chief Dominguez, for being here. We work with you all and with you specifically over different projects in downtown. Bethany House was one of them. We appreciate you all being collaborative with us. So one thing, that I wanted to express is that we're all for providing access to these fire vehicles. I think there's no other way to do it. But where I would like for there to be some consideration is where we know, I mentioned to you earlier, if we know the ladder truck can't go up because we've got utility wires everywhere, that maybe we rethink whether those improvements are necessary, because you still are not going to achieve it based on those utilities, right? And you guys can make that final decision on whether those are justifiable or not, but it would seem to me like if you're going to change substantially a design and yet you're still not going to be able to raise your ladder, that maybe you don't curtail the design that way. Those are, we talked about very quickly, just in passing before the meeting, about these face-to-face bump outs. He gave me good news that somebody in the team didn't like those either. So I think that was the one request I had last time, is to avoid the face-to-face. You're restricting the driveway, and it kind of goes against the full design of our staggering. So those are my two comments, but I think you all can reach, if you feel that you can reach, a good point of agreement to get all these things done, that'd be great. But if we concede a lot in terms of design, aesthetically, and in terms of walkability, and we can't get the ladder up anyway, we should really talk through those options.
No, we did talk about that. We did talk about, there is this one block in particular, what we call Block 1, has wires crisscrossing, and we kind of mentioned that, and I think the feedback that we got is, they're gonna go back and analyze it and double check it one last time, but I think in that particular block, the aerial truck wouldn't be able to raise its ladder because of the overhead electrical lines and communication lines that crisscross aerially. So in that particular case, I think were willing to work with us and consider, on a block by block basis, kind of consider things like that. Yeah, so we did work through those things. Staggering, they also didn't like that we had the bump outs together, and then I kind of expressed, we actually originally had staggered bump outs. We brought the bump outs together as a way to possibly, put the booms, and it would leave a space to put the booms out. But I think we were able to work out another design concept that would allow for that. So those are some of the feedback that we got that was, very positive, I guess, from our end.
Sure.
And works for them too. And so we're going to come back and bring those in.
Great, thank you.
I wanted to show, just as an example, I wanted to show this intersection. This is block number 1. So this is Zaragoza, and this is Convent. What we're looking at here at this intersection, again, going back to some of the feedback that we got from the fire department, is this is the roadway area, and this area here where I'm pointing is the sidewalk area. So what we intend to do here, as an example, is you would ramp down, and this sidewalk area here would be at the same level as the roadway. And so that would allow for, number one, pedestrian traffic crossing is crossing at grade. And then number 2 is, since we're bringing the sidewalk down to the roadway elevation, then it gives the fire department, the aerial truck, an ability, if they turn and they happen to kind of cut in a little bit too much, they can run over, if you want to call it that, run over a portion of the sidewalk, and it's at the same elevation as the roadway, right? So it doesn't cause them to jump a curb, as we call it, right?
So you would just change materials there
Correct.
to prescribe or to design that virtual
Yes.
sidewalk?
So one of the latest discussions that we had with the design team was making this Convent Zaragoza intersection as a brick intersection, so different material, and also making the sidewalk area here as brick, so it all looks like brick. So what we would have to do is we would have to put kind of a small strip, very likely it'll be a small strip of concrete that looks like a gutter or a piece of curb. And that would act as a color contrast between where the sidewalk ends and where the roadway begins. And that portion would be on top of where the curb essentially would be, or where we would expect the curb to be, right? But it would be, again, at grade. There's some examples that we've looked at throughout the country. There's one very good one in the Houston area on Westheimer and Sage, kind of by the Galleria Mall. And they've got kind of that concept of a brick with brick and then a curb as a color contrast barrier. So we've made some tweaks to this intersection and brought that pedestrian area down to the pavement level. One of the other things that we've been discussing with the design team is the design team has brought up a concept of, in the future, possibly having some kind of a large structure overhanging the intersection of Convent Zaragoza. So what we've been discussing about that, and again, for one very good example of that is, if you all are familiar with the Houston area, that Galleria area, they have that, there's a silver round ring that hangs, a circle that hangs over the intersection, and it has the street names on it. And that, we looked at that design carefully, and that seems to be, I think, conceptually what they want to look at for the future. Sure. It wouldn't be something that would be part of this project or built with this project, but it's something that would be looked at in the future. What we want to look at, or what we're considering as a design team, is making sure that we have the room to install something like that. You know, if we set poles, you know, we don't want that structure to be built and then all of a sudden we're having to move sidewalks and curbs to account for it, right? So what you see here is, you see these 4 black circles, and we're labeling it as proposed future traffic pole. So the idea there, and this is part of the coordination with the traffic department as this topic came up, is in the Houston Galleria area, it's actually a traffic signal pole that's just really tall and has the anchors that hold the system together. And on that same pole, you have the traffic signal arm with the lights on it. So this is gonna be something, if it gets completed in the future, it'll be something we need to coordinate with the traffic department and actually have those traffic signal poles relocated to this location here where we're showing, so that it does its kind of double duty, right? It holds the aerial structure and it holds the traffic signals. So we're trying to locate these for future to make sure that, you know, spatially they can be placed and they don't interact with the design and the construction that we do today. That's mainly what we're kind of depicting at this corner intersection. I believe I have another drawing that shows. Okay, so here, this is, I'll show real quick, this is the same drawing, same intersection, but I'll zoom into the intersection, and what we did here is we turned on we call this in the fire truck turning movement. So all I did is I just turned on the fire truck that we're using in our design analysis. And so as you see here, the red lines, if everybody can kind of see that. The red lines that are depicted on here are basically the wheel path of the truck. So obviously we got to keep those wheels on the roadway, right? The green lines that you see are different areas where, you know, the truck has a kind of a tail end that hangs out past the rear axle, and then you've got a little bit that hangs out over the front axle. And so the green line that you see here is depicted, that's a depiction of either the front end or the tail end, kind of tail dragging over the curb a little bit. So what's important for us that we need to see here is, you know, we need to make sure, you know, here we have a little bit of the green going over the curb. That's just the bumper going over the curb. We need to make sure we don't put a power pole or a traffic sign or something right at that spot, right? So we want to keep all those areas clear. And so you can see here that we don't have anything that clears over that. The green is just overhang. And then the red, if you look here, when you make this internal turn, there's a little bit of the red that gets right on top of the sidewalk here. And again, that's going to be at the same level as a pavement. So there won't be any issues with them just driving over that one spot right there. And this is with the fire truck design kind of getting pushed to the exterior. Here, the fire truck will drive a little bit on top of the existing bike lane just to make the maneuver, and then they'll square back up into the roadway. So that's all that we're showing here on this design. And again, Fire department hadn't seen this yet, because we've been tweaking this up, but this is what we'll present to them. And then when we go to the field, we'll analyze this. We're gonna go ahead and mark where this curb would be, and we could also mark where this portion will be here, and then have them make the maneuver in the field, and then determine what kind of spatially, is it working for both of us?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. When he says the bumper comes out, one of the comments that was made is the fire truck, the driver's actually sitting in front of the front tire. Most of us in our cars, the front tire's in front of us, but in this case, it's behind the driver. So as they're turning, that's why that bumper's out in front. So if that kind of helps out with that, I didn't really think about that until they explained that to me. My second comment, this is for staff. What is the status of the taxi cab spots that they park at? Is that something that's like off limits, don't touch? Can they be moved around?
So we don't have that information, that's not in our department. So I have asked other departments to see who has handled, if anybody has handled those type of agreements. I've even asked management, I'm still waiting for responses.
Is the traffic department correct? Or is it the traffic department that's?
I'm not sure.
Oh, you're not sure.
I haven't received any responses, like, on who's responsible for, or if there is any agreement out there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's a discussion certainly that, I know we've talked about it, but as we get into construction and we look at construction phasing, there will probably be a period of time on this block that the taxi parking area will have to be where the traffic gets shifted to, right? We'll have to shift, possibly very highly, we'll have to shift traffic onto that alignment so that we have enough room to construct the stuff on the north side. So at least for a portion of construction, there might have to be temporarily relocated. So we'll have to probably get to that discussion, before the end of our plans, right?
I could also suggest if the church board would like to request that officially from city management, that might be
Okay,
also easier.
just send an email, right, just to, okay, yeah, we'll do that. I don't think we have an option. I think we need to coordinate to address that use. I don't know that it would change permanently. I know the question arises, like, what are the options? Do we have room to move them back or on the side street, on the other street on Convent? Those options, so I agree.
Yeah, we've, internally, as we're looking at some of the traffic control and construction phasing, we've discussed that and trying to consider where else can we put them. We might need some direction from the city or somebody else, as a possible location where they can either temporarily be or maybe even permanently be, right?
I'll put that on my list to email the city manager.
Okay. But yeah, that's what that was really kind of the updates that we had on this. This was kind of one of the main intersections that we've kind of updated, mainly because of the intersection layout. And then, of course, the future structure that we've been discussing, and placing that or trying to place that for the future. Oh, okay. This is, Zaragoza Block 1.
You're gonna
You
test
wanna
all of
explain the
them?
renderings, or?
What's that?
What, you're gonna test all of them when you guys go out there? not just one?
We'll test whatever the fire department wants us to
Request.
test. Yeah, I believe the two main areas were kind of the big turn areas, which is Santa Úrsula to Iturbide, Santa Úrsula to Iturbide. And then the second one is this one that I showed, the Zaragoza to Convent. It's really more at the turns that they're concerned about some space. Again, we did talk about some areas in the middle, like along Iturbide, where we had the bump outs brought in, and we left them about 12 feet of passable space, and they're saying, well, if we can alternate those, and it gives them a little space to move around. If they wish to investigate that in the field, we'll be happy to do so. But I think the main discussion in the field, the one last time to go to the field, is those two intersections.
Those two.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I have some
Yes, go ahead,
questions, and I have a lot of questions. Thank you for all of this work. This design is coming along exponentially, right? There's a lot more detail in here than the last one that I saw. And I don't even know where to start. It looks like,
I can zoom in if you want to.
well, I want to thank the fire chief for being here. And I appreciate that you took the time to actually come to our meeting. And I did have some questions about how many times, well, especially with what Mr. Ceballos said about the ladder truck not being able to ladder up anyway because of those overhead lines that are there on Zaragoza Street. But I wonder how many times, do we know how many times the ladder truck has even made that turn in the last 10 years?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure.
Rodrigo Dominguez, District Chief, Laredo Fire Department. I don't have those statistics. I know we have had several fires in the downtown area. But one thing I did want to clarify, when we think of an aerial truck, the first thing everybody thinks of is raising the boom for rescue, right, to upper levels. But that's not the only thing that that truck does. When we have a fire downtown, we send multiple units. You have a district chief, you have an ambulance, you have a fire engine, and then you also have the aerial truck. But each one of those trucks serves a different purpose. A fire engine is going to go out there, and their primary duty is fire attack. But when you bring an aerial truck in, aerial trucks are in charge of rescue. They're in charge of utilities, cutting off water, the gas. They're also in charge of ventilation. There's a lot of functions that that truck does that is not the responsibility or duty of the regular engine. So not being able to get these trucks close enough to these buildings can severely hamper your fire ground operation. So I did want to clarify that that's not the only purpose of that aerial truck. So, and I do want to thank Mr. Ochoa because he's come and he's kind of tweaked it, his creativity, his ideas is making this possible because for the fire department side, I mean, we've never, that I can remember since I've been here, approved something so narrow. We've always tried to get a minimum of 20 feet. And in some of these areas, we're kind of looking at 12. But the chief is very invested in making this work. And together, going and redesigning, going and doing these runs, I think we're at a point where we're almost there, where we haven't touched so much the aesthetics of what you're trying to achieve. The aesthetics and the functionality of the design, I think, has just barely been tweaked, while we'll still have just the bare minimum access. So I think we're almost there. So I think in this next trial run that we go to, I think we're gonna be able to get it. That way we can get the trucks that we need out there. Because remember, at the end of the day, we're talking about the safety and lives of the people that are in those buildings, and then the safety of the firefighters also. We wanna make sure that we can do the job that you've assigned us to do. We wanna do that, but we need the access to be able to do it. But with the work Mr. Ochoa's put in, the trial runs we've gone out there, I think we're almost there. And this is something brand new for us, something we've never done before. And I really, really believe that we're almost there so you can have we know how important this is. That's why the chief's putting so much effort in it. So I really believe that we're almost there where you're gonna get the looks and function that you're looking for, the larger sidewalks, the trees, the greenery, and we can still have the access that we need so that people who are gonna occupy, because remember, we're trying to get downtown moving again. We want it occupied. So we're looking at buildings that are gonna have more people in them, potentially changes of occupancy also, where some of these buildings can be turned into apartment complexes. The U.S. Fire Administration talks about 90, I think 89, depending on what year you get the statistics, 89 to 90% of all fire fatalities happen where people sleep. And I know one of the things that they're looking for in the downtown area is to start turning that into apartment buildings. And if we can, these changes that we're making are pretty much permanent. So we want to make sure that we're going to put something out there that's going to work so that it'll help the future changes that you all want to make for the downtown area. And I really think that we're almost there. And again, well, a lot of that is due to Mr. Ochoa's creativity and the amount of work and time that the chief is putting in this to get this done. But I really believe that with this next meeting where we go and mark these streets, I think we're gonna be able to reach a compromise where we have the access we need and you get what you're looking for the downtown area.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate, I know you've had up to about 3 different meetups, all the 10 different people in your department, we appreciate that. And I agree, I think with this next run, I think we'll come back with something that everybody is happy with. You have some other questions?
Thank you for all of that.
Thank you. Well,
Work that you're doing.
my team is a big part of it, so I have to give my team credit. But yeah, I mean, it's, one thing that I'd like to say, I guess, kind of on that point, well said by the chief, we've worked together quite a bit on this, so behind the scenes, there's been a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But the important thing here is, getting this tweaked to, and this is the first phase of it, right, of future downtown improvements, but we're almost setting a very unique design standard that we hope, once we address, when we do phases 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, we've already, we've already addressed the major issues with the fire department. If we establish these standards, get them in writing, then as we move forward in the downtown area, we're respecting all of these design concepts. So a little bit of a painful step, it's taking a little bit longer for us to kind of iron things out, but I'm very confident that we've got, he said it very well, we're very close to getting this figured out. They've done a tremendous job in listening to our design ideas and finding ways to work with us, so.
Thank you. So I won't ask my other question about going forward and then backing up, because that just doesn't seem like it's gonna be necessary. But if you would go to the next slide that you showed.
This one has the fire truck movement?
No, the one that showed that.
This one?
This, okay. So, like on this side of the street, is this Zaragoza looking, no, on the bottom right, on the bottom right.
Bottom right, okay.
Yeah, is that looking, west?
This would probably be Zaragoza looking west, kind of from the Ueta building looking west, it looks like, right? Towards Salinas. Towards Salinas, yeah.
Okay,
This is, this looks like a view essentially mid-block looking in a westerly direction.
because, and I know we can talk about this later, but what I'm envisioning is some of the sidewalks that are in downtown right now that have a tree that impedes the passage of people, and, with their things, and so I'm kind of seeing that there. I'm not sure where this is, but I'm wondering if there's any way, if in this kind of image, if we could put the actual image of the south side of the street, like install it there. Like use because the improvement, right? But then that's certainly not what the south side of the street looks like.
Yeah, we could look at doing that. I think the important thing to note on the trees is that there are tree grates on those trees. So we're trying to maintain, we're trying to leave about, from like the center line of the tree to the wall, about 3.5 feet. So that's enough room to navigate a wheelchair through there.
Okay, so a wheelchair or a stroller or
Yeah,
a
so
rolly back.
each tree will have a tree grate, essentially.
Okay. And who's gonna maintain those trees?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's probably, the same people that maintain our current trees right now, which is, we've been trying to determine that.
So I did ask the question, and I was advised that, so plazas and parks are by the Parks Department, and Public Works does handle, I think they said sidewalk cleaning, and, but they didn't mention the trees.
Streets.
And streets, yes, so trees were not mentioned.
Tina?
Yeah, so council members joined us, so thank you for making time to be here with us again. So yeah, I mean, a business district would certainly assist in doing this kind of work. But in the meantime, I think we need to have a good force behind, if it's the Parks Department, whoever this in the city, to make sure that they stay alive once we put them in the ground.
Yeah.
Tina, at the last meeting that I was at, I did ask for, the schedule, the procedure, the whatever, the parks and the, what is it, utilities?
I did request it.
No, what is it? Is it
No,
parks and then who
Public
does?
Works, Public Works.
Public Works.
So I did request it, and I wasn't given the schedule, I was just given that summary of parks deals with plazas and parks in the downtown, and Public Works deals for its streets and sidewalks.
But, so there is no schedule? I mean, they didn't make a schedule available?
They did not make it available to me.
So if I request that as a private citizen?
You can always do like an open records request.
We can throw it into the email that I'm gonna send the
Correct.
city manager
Correct.
as well.
That's a good
So, to see what the, how many times they water a tree, or how many times they cut a tree, or if they're over fertilized, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. In the past, we even asked to know, who is it, like, because we don't see, who is who are the individuals that are actually doing this?
And so the business district does exist, so maybe they could, work with that data to try and figure out what they're gonna do.
I'll put that into the email.
Thank you. I had one more, well, two things really, and I know, Mr. Choi, you've been very helpful working with the community and trying to bring the stakeholders in, and I know how difficult it is to work with so many opinions. But I would like to see, in the spirit of openness and inclusivity, that the people in this area, where this is gonna happen, that they have the opportunity, and I know we did that before, but it was early on and there weren't these details in place, that we could really give the people that are running businesses and owning property there, the opportunity to maybe come together, and we could do it there at one of the stores, that's right in that area, so it's not cumbersome to get people to come, so that they could see what's gonna happen. Specifically, it looks like you took away the, if you show the brick wall again, where the rendering, it looks like that has become a brick wall instead of a low area that you could see through, you could see the store, and you could sit. What happened to all that?
So I think this was something that was worked on. I know that at one point we did have a bench out here. And as we were working through these sidewalk dimensions, it became increasingly clear that that bench really wasn't, it was going to get too narrow to the point that it really didn't serve a purpose, that we figured it would be better to give that space back to the business owners by making their platform bigger in front of their business. And then we also decided to just have a low wall with a little bit of a guardrail. And the idea behind that was to not have a bunch of railing, like we've talked about not having any railing whatsoever. I think the brick was just something that we talked about maybe introducing to tie it back to the El Portal area with the brick that's being used out there. It was an idea that we've talked about, but the main reason for what you see here is we're really trying to utilize that space better. That bench was really not serving its purpose.
So what it does to that business, right, is hide it behind a wall. It looks like, and I don't see the dimensions.
Right.
So I can't speak to, exactly what that's gonna look like, but you do see that if someone has those businesses, that's an empty building, and I, full disclosure, it looks like maybe an area that my family has some interest in.
Yeah.
But the man that, if I can, I don't know exactly where that is, but it's a man that sells perfume in those areas, that he's gonna be now behind a brick wall.
Yeah. Yeah, the wall only comes up a couple feet, so it's not like super tall. but-
A couple of feet, but except that is
Well, from the
But the
business
other
owner's side.
angle, I see it almost like you're also providing them more space for their business.
Yes,
And
here.
in
like-
terms of what you, I mean, because it does seem like it's more dense from the last version. Because
Yes.
you also can do string railing, right, which
Yeah.
is basically
there's-
see-through.
There, like this wall, the height is just sort of a height, you know, it can be lower, it can be higher. you know.
Okay.
If we feel like it's too high, we can certainly drop it. But then we would need some sort of railing there to provide before, go ahead.
Can I say
Yeah,
something?
go ahead.
Sorry. Juan Garza with Able City, for the record. And one of the intention of that wall being that high is because if you provide a sitting area for a restaurant, for example, if people is on the other side at different level, they might be able to see someone sitting, right? So that is why we made it that high, but it could be changed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would, Ms. Alexander, I would think that you probably want to see where I agree with you, where the building face, like what is the cutoff of the buildings? Is if I'm a business owner, which I'm not, this might be an amenity that you're getting that's really not costing the business owner anything, and it's creating additional space for them to be able to use. You know, I'm not gonna say to market, and the city might not agree with that, but it becomes usable space for that tenant or that property owner. But it would be good to have a shot of what's behind it, so
Yeah.
we know like, well, that's right in front of the door, they could,
Yeah, like to see where the storefronts are on the back, to be able to really get a gauge for what that looks like.
yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. So we can come,
And you have a minimum height that you have to meet, right, to reach that elevation, right? there-
So again, so everybody remembers, there is a great difference between the
Right.
high side and the low side. So you're gonna have a wall that's at least maybe 12 to 18 inches tall. I believe it's about 18 inches on the average. So you'll have that, but I mean, 18 inches is only up to about knee level for us, right? So it's not very much. What you do above that, I guess, you know, you can either bring a brick up higher and then have rail, or just from that 18-inch
Right.
high area,
With rail.
you put it all rail. It's really just whatever the TERS board wants to consider, I would think, right, Rick?
yeah.
Well, and the business owners there, you know, they might want to look at that a little closer to see what elevation works best for them.
Correct.
If they don't see that as usable space, maybe you just leave it at minimum
Yeah,
with,
with a rail.
you know, minimal.
Because it needs a guardrail, whether we, you know,
Well, they have the, you know, the threaded, small,
Yeah,
thin
yeah, yeah,
guardrail
yeah.
that you
Yeah.
really don't, it doesn't, you know, you can't really, it's not an obstacle to the site.
it's like a cable rail. or
Yes,
something.
cable rail, that's
Yeah,
correct.
we could do that.
Yeah, at this point, it looks like that wall goes up halfway, like halfway to the, like if there was a front door on that business behind there, the wall would be halfway.
Understood.
So you would only see
Yeah.
from that's what it looks like just from
Yeah.
this.
No, and I
yeah.
could see that.
Um,
Definitely, it's a little
Dr.
more.
Uribe, I'll give you some time right after Rick
And
finishes.
because those bricks could be, you know, they could be separated so you could see through them. I mean, there's different things
Yeah,
instead
for
of
sure.
making the wall.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Uribe, did you want to chime in?
For the record, Marcela Uribe from Laredo Main Street. I just want to again insist that Texas Historical Commission has reached out to me. They are very interested in the Zaragoza project because they saw what happened when the mall was built on that side where we have absolutely empty stores, all that street. And they are willing to look at the design. And remember, they're also a design team, and they have a lot of experience with other downtowns with maybe similar problems. So, I mean, I just want to offer again, they called me last week, like what's happening with Zaragoza. So I think it's still, we have a little bit of time, and it would be very helpful.
Sure. If you want to pass along the contact, I'll send them the, you know, the current state of our plans and they can chime in.
Yeah,
you know.
and they were actually asking for some of the design, some of the drafts, so they can look at them as well from the architectural.
I don't think anyone would object in sharing, you know, our latest concepts for sure,
It's
so.
public information,
Yes,
no?
absolutely.
So-
So that, you know, that's fine, whatever the team's ready to share in terms of their updates, we can get them to them. If you want to be the person that they connect with too, we can send them to you and you can forward to them.
However, it's
Let's do that, we'll get them to you and then you can send it to them and they can participate however they want.
perfect.
We appreciate their own.
Thank you.
Anything else? I think we're still with Ms. Alexander.
Well, this looks great. I'm hoping that Counselor Figueroa back there thank you for coming, will maybe talk with us, because this is just one block, and maybe we could include, at least maybe just get the drawings ready at this point for the south side of the street, because this is gonna look markedly better, and then the south side of the street is going to look the way it looks now. And, you know, maybe the cost would be, maybe it would be doable, right, to do it all at one time, both sides of the street. But at least maybe we could talk with her about maybe just getting the idea going so that it's more uniform at one point. I don't know.
Do we have grade issues on that side, Edward, that you're aware of? Like, are we looking at similar grade issues on the south side, or?
So the south side of the street, from what we've looked at, I guess, is it currently has sidewalk and then you have steps kind of in between the buildings. And that one, I think, tends to be almost a whole continuous building. The north side of the street, believe it or not, there's small gaps in between the buildings that have some separation. But yeah, I mean, there were some great differences on the north side of the street, similar to the south side of the street. The south side of the street already had steps that you would walk up on in between. So we would need to look at, you know, certainly on that side of the street is how those steps would incorporate. I think it would be much more difficult to maybe make a ADA accessible route through over there. But at least you have the north side of the street that's ADA accessible.
Right.
To go from point A to point B or point A to point
Is
Z.
that
right?
permissible?
As a walkthrough, I'm sorry.
Is that permissible to address ADA on one side and not the other? As
We need to look at that. Ideally, ADA wants everything to be accessible within the street right away. But there are some ways, I don't want to say ways out of it, right? But there are some alternatives that can be considered, mainly when you're looking at an existing downtown and an existing facility, existing buildings, limited space. ADA does have some alternatives you can consider. So we just need to see if, you know, having an ADA accessible route on one side but not the other is acceptable to ADA. We need to kind of look into that further.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Ms. Alexander?
Do you have any ideas about how we could maybe meet with some of those business owners? Because there's, Mr. Cruthers wanted to be here today, but he had another meeting, and he represents the WETA interests, which are open on this street. And I see they have kind of like a flat, and I think that's their curb cut still in there.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask Rick a question. So how difficult is it to render the building behind these elevations? Is that something that we could put into a board and contact each of the property owners to see what their thoughts are on it?
Yeah, we can.
In terms of just that elevation,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we can look at trying to basically, can we do it? Yes. Offhand, I don't know how long it's gonna take us, but we can do it.
Because I think that's the easiest way to go is, I don't know, how many property owners do we have in that block? 5, 4?
Well,
Probably about 5
I
or
think
6
it's about
on that
5
side.
properties, but
Is-
2 of the buildings are the same owner on the north side.
So rendering it and then, you know, kind of sharing a poster with them?
Yes.
I think that would give them, and then that we can engage in that way. That seem practical to you all? Rick, Edward?
Yeah, we can, we can do that.
Okay. Edward, how far along are we with, like, do we have all the elevation surveying on the south side block?
I need to look back. We have the line work, so we have some elevations. I don't believe we got as much detail on the south side of the block as we did on the north side, I guess. So it's kind of a yes and no answer, right?
Because we're gonna be back on the other corner when we do phase 2 with Salinas, right? With
We'll
phase
be
2.
on the Salinas corner,
Yeah.
yes, sir, correct. So, as an example, on the north side, since we knew we were working on the north side as part of our scope, we got every single door as a spot elevation, because we knew we were working on that side. On the south side, I believe we definitely have the curb tied, and we probably have some sidewalk shots. I don't know if we tied every single door. It might be a little bit of additional field work, but we do have some on the south side already. it wouldn't take very long to get that additional field work put in if we were directed to do so.
All right, I'll post this to the board. I think the item allows it, the way it's written, any other, as may be requested by the design team. So you guys haven't requested it, but do we want to entertain, mocking up a potential design for the south side of Zaragoza? Without, in my eyes, without disrupting the phase one, project, because I think we're knee deep in finalizing that. Would the board want to entertain that?
I'll move that we do that.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that. Yeah, I think it's
Navarro
important we get
seconds.
that information, because looking at the taxi cab stand and the width for the turn, we're gonna need that south information.
So everybody understand, this is the costliest, in my eyes, the costliest block per square foot. Y'all disagree with that? So just everybody be advised, but at the same time, I don't think it hurts to have some, even if it's conceptual design, in the event. I think this block probably will need to get done sometime in the future, this other half, right? So we kind of carved the things that we thought we could afford. You know, we keep adding more, when this number comes back, we'll have less, we'll be able to do less. But as long as, you know, everyone's aware and advised, I personally don't see an issue. A lot of the survey work's probably already done, but I don't want to send the team on a tangent to fully design something when we're finalizing phase one. I think, we're gonna be back in that area, hopefully within 18 months with the next grant. So, I mean, we have a motion and a second to take any other discussion on it.
Yeah, no, just to your point that, you know, I've really, I don't want to distract from breaking ground. I want to turn some dirt soon. And so, you know, absolutely in the future, agree that we should get the surveys, but I don't want to slow down our process. I know we'll talk about procurement next, but getting those bids out sooner rather than later so we can start the process.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, is that scope of work something that the engineer would have to submit a quote for?
It
That's
wasn't in
not-
their original
that's not part
response,
of the
yes.
original,
It's not, it was not in the original scope. Edward, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, sir. No, just to reiterate that, yeah, it wasn't in our original scope, to look at a conceptual and a detailed survey of that side. I mean, I will certainly go back and look at what information we have on the south side. If we have enough information, I will certainly let everybody know that we would need to do additional work for that, from a survey perspective, right? But I need to just go back and look at our files to determine how much detail we have and if we have enough. But I believe we might need to go to the field and maybe get some additional survey, just to kind of supplement what we already have. And then I think you're discussing a conceptual layout as part of this
Yeah,
discussion? Yeah, so, that definitely would have to be part of our scope to look at in addition. And, you know, like I said, investigate ADA and looking into possibility of whether we have to make it an ADA accessible route, or if there's a possibility to, you know, have the steps that are currently there and just kind of redo the whole concept, you know.
Okay, would you accept doing that after we finalize this phase one project?
Is there a way to, not to get the conceptualization of that, because that could wait until the Salinas project, but at least, like, put whatever data they already have, the survey data that you say that you already have available as part of this work to make it available, because I'm not sure, is it available now in the work that you've done for the north side of the street?
Yeah, I mean, I do recall that we have additional miscellaneous improvements as part of our scope that's already been approved. And I think there was some budget set aside for that. And I think generally, we've used that a little bit to kind of look at the angled parking, right? You know, maybe there's some funds there that will allow us to get some initial information that stays within our approved scope, right? I would just need to look at that. I'd be happy to visit with the board or the city team and make sure that whatever we're asking for, we can do.
Well, in this case, it's that and timing, right? So,
So if we're looking at adding that to the design of phase one, then, you know, that's, I know.
I think
know
you're
that-
in
that's a
agreement that it
discussion,
come
but-
back during a phase two, right? It's, well,
Well, it seems like what Mr. Navarro said about the, doing those four corners right there is gonna require, I'm sure you had to do some survey work on that corner.
Yeah, certainly,
Where the-
right at the intersection of Convent, so we have the intersection of Convent.
southwest corner, right.
Southwest corner, and on Salinas, we have the southeast corner, yeah.
Oh, so you have those two ends
Sure.
already?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't want to speak out of turn, I need to double check what we have on our CAD file. I'm very positive we have some shots, some elevation shots along the south side. I don't know how much we have. I don't recall if we got a measurement at every single door on the south side, because we did that on the north side. Understanding that we had to, whatever we did with the sidewalk had to match the door on the north side, right? So we were very careful about getting every single door. I don't know how much work we have. But, I mean, I'd be happy to circle back. I mean, I can have an answer on that by tomorrow. You know, I just need to look at our information.
And on the door front, you know, some of the property owners will, you know, if you think it's a better design, and we talked about that, some of the property owners will, because I know you're working with some creative stuff that's in existence, some of the property owners will contribute so that it can be a better design,
Yeah,
ultimately.
so, you know, we did that investigation on the north side and with some of the property owners and looked at what the building looked like inside, and certainly there, you know, we worked with some to, where they would do an improvement that would better the outside. That would be something we would have to do on the south side also, because, you know, the south side has, if you look at it right now, it has steps almost between each building or each unit. There's steps on the outside sidewalk, so that tells me that there's got to be a drop in the foundation somewhere in between there. We just need to look and investigate, is the drop external, or is it partially internal, or is it both, you know? And it just takes a field visit to do that. We
yeah,
can look at
I would support the motion if it was in phase two and we look at all those things after this phase one goes out. That's my personal.
I mean, I can probably get a quick answer to the amount of survey work that we have, you know, probably by tomorrow, right? So that helps kind of answer that, you know, that side of things. You know, I just need to look at that at the office.
All right. You want to restate your motion?
To say, so the way the
So
motion.
you're interested in having a conceptual design of
N-
south?
Not really, no, not the conceptual design, just to have the data, right, so that when it's time to do but I see now that that would be useless until we go to the design, right? And it'll probably happen with the phase two with that, so once the grant, do we find out about the grant? We got the grant and,
We have not received the funding agreement yet, but it probably will happen within 18 months.
oh,
There's a time frame for that award, for that use of funds.
well, of course, I would like to see, since this TERS board was created to connect San Agustin Cathedral to the mall along there, I would like to see both sides of one block of Zaragoza done. But, you know, I understand if everyone votes no, well then, okay, but,
Well, it's
I
how
would-
we took off with this phase one that we're all following. That's basically what we're doing. But I mean, I think you can get the information, right? You have what you have, that's,
I think if it's minimal work and he has the information, we're good, but if he has to go out and do a lot more, then maybe we back off and wait till phase two.
oh,
you
that's a
know,
good way to
just
put it.
Kind of see what he's got. If he has it, he has it.
are you want to wait on the action till you see what he has?
Well, can we just say it like that? If it's a whole ton of work, well then, you know, we'll put it for phase two, but if it's doable, then he can, I mean, Mr. Ochoa,
I don't believe it's a whole ton of work, honestly. It's not gonna be a whole ton of work. I'm pretty confident we've got a good amount of information. But to get into maybe conceptually, having some information conceptually, I'm probably pretty sure we've got enough maybe to do a conceptual layout. But if we're talking about looking at exact elevations,
And drawings
And dra-
eventually, that's a substantial amount of, so part of this too is that we build a project budget based on the blocks and sites of blocks that we did, so I'll let you finish up with.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say that, we're getting I'm pretty confident we've got enough information to maybe do a conceptual layout. But if we're talking about getting into some of the details that we have here, I'm not saying a full-blown design, but getting into some of the details that we had on the north side where we're looking at split elevations and knowing how high that difference would be, I might need to go back and spot check a lot of those doors so that we know how close we are, right? But yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to proceed in any way.
All right, so you want to restate your motion so we can vote on this?
So, restating to include Mr. Navarro's language that, that the design team, provides, information that would be, important to improving the south side of the street. Now, or, if it's not
For
a
that
ton of work,
information,
right?
yeah. Just
From-
asking for information, not asking for construction drawings and all that, so
From Convent to Salinas on the south side of the street.
Convent to Salinas on the south side, yeah.
that motion clear? So the motion, as I understand it, is to come back, or to request that our civil engineer produce the information to assess whether we have enough data to do a conceptual drawing. Is that it?
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay.
Understood?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None, motion passes. Thank you very much. Any other questions? We're an hour plus into this meeting. We're still on one item of the action items. Are there any other questions or comments? So I suspect that at the next meeting, we will actually be approving some level of final drawings. You're at 90+% now?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much at 90%, the two main things, and I mentioned it at the last meeting, is, addressing the concerns and needs of the fire department and making sure they work with ours. And certainly kind of hand in hand is with the traffic department, because, as like what I showed at the Convent intersection, affects pedestrian movement and traffic department items too. So it's almost like, got to go through one and make sure everything's good, and then go to the other, make sure everything's good, and then kind of get them all together, right? So we've talked about doing maybe a joint meeting with the traffic and fire department so that we can hash it all out. But those are really the two main final items.
Utilities.
Utilities, correct. So utilities, the utilities director was at that meeting that we had at the city manager's office several months ago and mentioned that he would just stay in front of us going through construction. So I think at this point, what we probably need to do is just decide that we're gonna go in an order, block 1 through block 9 in construction, and just let the utilities director know that and make sure that he's already got it in his schedule to have those improvements. If he's got any improvements on block 1, for example, is this Zaragoza from Convent to Salinas, we need to tell him now, this is the first one we're gonna start with, and then he needs to make sure he's already working or doing whatever improvements he needs to do now. And then he stays ahead of us. We will coordinate with him. I'll work on setting up a meeting with him. It's been several months since we met and talked about that. He was very willing to be in front of us, as we say. I guess he'll have his improvements done before we get there, is what he said. I'll circle back with him next week and make sure that he understands that our timeline is, we're getting there at the end. He needs to make sure he's already moving on his end, right?
Great, thank you very much. I don't think there's any action then on this item. We'll move on to action. Next action item, discussion with possible action to authorize the use of competitive seal proposal procurement and project delivery method for TERS number 1, phase 1 projects. And I added that to the agenda knowing that we still had some pending discussion with the city engineer and the procurement department. I did not hear back, so I don't think we have the update We are trying to establish if this process, the construction our construction project would be eligible to use this process. So this is a process that would allow us to take in, kind of qualifications and a rating criteria, and not just a bid number. So this item probably will come back next month. The procurement department director, I believe, was out, so he hadn't been able to chime in on this topic.
Is that Mr. Pescador?
Yes.
Okay.
And also probably the city engineer needs to get
Yes.
involved since it's construction.
Yes, and he is coordinating that discussion with the procurement director. Am I stating all that correctly, Rick, from your?
Yes, that is correct. We just
Item-
need some clarification.
I'll move on to item 10, update and discussion of possible action related to the development and implementation of TERS number 1 mural and storefront program, setting key requirements, obtaining property owners' permission or approval, and any other matters incident thereto. So this is the follow-up of this item to the last meeting. And I know Rick, you spoke about several meetings. If you want to kind of recap and then take us through what's next steps.
Sure. So again, Rick Solis with Able City. We had a committee meeting where we talked about some of the items that were brought up at the last TERS meeting. Probably item number 1 was site selection. I think we had presented a couple of sites, and I think at that time the consensus was, well, come back with more sites. So we've actually gone and done that, and as the committee met, we developed some ideas. The other thing was we talked about the procurement guidelines and how we were going to proceed with this, whether through the website or using the city's procurement documents. And then the last one was potentially adding some storefronts into the mural design or the mural process as a way to be able to bring some color downtown in an easy and effective way. Just some of the comments that came from that was instead of utilizing plywood for those storefronts, somebody came with the idea of maybe using window decals instead. They're easy to stick on and take off, which I think everyone that we've talked to agrees is probably the way to go, as opposed to boarding up a window. Now, if the window's already boarded up, well, then we can use that. Otherwise, we can maybe utilize some of those storefronts. As far as the procurement methods, I think the city had used one for that mural on Convent on the senior living center. That I think everybody was sort of in agreement that works. That particular procurement document had a stated funding amount, and I think the committee sort of agreed that we shouldn't give any funding amount. It should be like, here's a mural, you tell us what it's going to cost to include everything, and then they can be ranked in that order. So we had those meetings with the committee, then we did meet with the councilwoman and talked about some different things. And that's what the presentation is going to focus on at this time. So in looking at the different locations that we've talked about, we sort of broke them down into murals and storefronts, right? It's all part of the same program now. The murals being areas, one other thing I'd like to add that we did figure out in talking with the building department was that murals per se don't need a permit. Unless it's in the Historic District Landmark Board region, then it goes to that different process. But as far as getting a permit for a mural, you don't need that, whereas for a sign, you would. There's still, in the signage ordinance, there's a process for that talks about the approvals that you need to get, but for the most part, that's not included. So you're not limited to the size either, whereas in the sign ordinance, certain sizes are limited to a certain area, where we're not limited to that in this case. So the areas that we wanted to focus on were along Zaragoza Street, from La Posada down to the outlets. And then the other two areas that we wanted to target would be Flores and San Agustin Avenue towards the Center for the Arts. There was an idea about Carmen Arte does this walking tour, and that these are sort of the areas where they walk in, that this would be a good use of the funds to sort of target those storefronts in those areas. As far as the murals are concerned, the areas that we were looking at, one, as you're coming off the bridge, this is the backside of La Posada, but it's essentially this wall here. As a welcome to the United States, we could have a mural there as a good location for a mural. The second was, there's this old billboard that's tattered, and it's also on Zaragoza Street, that maybe we could utilize this for a mural, you know, to put something up there, again, to welcome the travelers that are coming from Mexico. So we talked about these two. We talked also about potentially there's a large area here on the corner of Zaragoza and Salinas Street for another mural. Now, I do know that wall texture isn't great, but it's sort of an idea like that's also on the way to the outlets. You can be walking, looking, and seeing. And then one other area was the corner of Salinas Street and Zaragoza. This is, again, if people are coming up from Convent to go back to Mexico, these are the way these people are coming down Salinas Street. So it's a very heavily trafficked area that we think it would, we'd get our most bang for our bucks.
Also, people going to the outlets, right? They
Yes,
can use
exactly, that you can utilize this wall for that. I think a couple of other locations we talked about, and this one, the one on San Agustin Avenue, we had already had that on our previous murals location, but we still think it's a viable location along along San Agustin Avenue. And then this other one is also on San Agustin Avenue, right in front of it's on the southwest corner of the intersection of San Agustin and Iturbide. It's the diocese parking lot is right here on the other side. So as far as murals, again, we sort of switched it from trying to locate in different areas of the city to really focusing in on Zaragoza and then along San Agustin and Flores Street. We think that's the most trafficked areas for people walking from La Posada or from San Agustin Cathedral or La Posada to Zaragoza, and then up and down Flores and San Agustin to the Center for the Arts. So I think the committee sort of came to this consensus that they felt like this was the best use of that money. With regards to storefronts, again, there's a lot of them, but we just sort of labeled a few of them. There's this one right at the corner of Zaragoza, right by that billboard. There's a lot of glass there. I think right now there's a picture of some hot dogs. But again, it's a beautiful storefront. You can see they had already used decals before for advertisement. We can certainly use that for a mural. We do have a lot of these boarded, not boarded, but these vacant buildings that have these burglar bars. I don't know how the decals would work here. We may need to go back to the plywood idea on these particular ones, or we put them on the inside, or we just need to see how they look. Maybe somebody can get creative and use the bars as part of the design, right? Again, further down Flores Avenue, there's a lot of these buildings that are just sitting there, not real activated. Same thing at this corner of Flores and
the old Vidados area that we talked about.
yes, yeah, exactly. So then Flores, again, right in front of Center for the Arts, there's some other areas that just could use some TLC. Even along Hidalgo Street, where the Plaza Theater is, some of those buildings, or not Plaza Theater, on the other side. So again, we've tried to just identify different areas. I think conceptually what we wanted to present to the board is the areas that we wanted to focus in, to have both murals and storefronts included in this program, to utilize the procurement processes that are already been adopted by the city to proceed with this, and potentially even introduce the website to get more feedback from artists and property owners. So that's kind of where we're at, I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
So the other thing that was discussed is that we wanted to get permission first before putting it out there, right?
That's correct.
So you need that direction from us.
Yes, that.
And from my notes is, like, I acknowledge to the group that I'm not an expert in art, but the other way, I go in the other direction. So I don't need to be part of that committee, and that work. But I do agree that there needs to be at least a couple of people that are art experts. Or, you know, I think I'll ask the councilwoman to name a couple of folks that we can invite to be part of that group. And I can also help in helping us score the proposals when they come in and make recommendations to this group, to this board, at the right time. Those are the things that I had that I know were kind of discussed. I don't know if there was any other comments.
I spoke with somebody that used to be on this board that insisted that the murals, that the money's already in place and that the board can decide to spend it, that there doesn't need to be a procurement process. I'm not sure, I'm texting him to see what he's saying about that, but he says the money was already been voted on, it's available, the board voted on it, and that, I mean, of course, I agree with you that some artists should be part of the process.
I
right?
think if we decided to, I think in part that's correct. Like if we decided these are the spaces, but once you invite folks, then there has to be some solicitation. Like if we made a decision that we're going to use this money in this particular wall, I think that generally sounds correct. But the minute we invite the public, and even there's a property owner, a private property owner, you know, I think that would probably require some analysis of whether we would need to be competitive in selecting the space. But I think part of this invitation is kind of beating the drum of redevelopment and getting folks excited about this process. But partially, like I said, I do agree that this board could use those funds the way it deems a project appropriate.
What do you mean be competitive choosing the space?
Well, if you could have an owner that says, I never got the opportunity for you to put a mural, right? You pre-selected folks without inviting, so somebody could say that, right? Not just the artist, but the space, the actual property owner. But I do agree that the board, just like we agree to put a monument at a particular corner. That's what this board is charged with, deciding that. So I do agree that there's that leniency. I'm not 100% sure on whether if we pick a space, if it's a public space, I think we can make that decision. But if it's a private space, private wall, I think, that's kind of in a gray area in the way I see it.
I believe all of these are private owners.
Private.
Yeah, I don't believe we have one that's, well, I don't know, I take it back. I think the city might own one of these buildings somewhere on here. I don't remember which one.
The music place, is that city-owned? The music store?
ABC Music.
Yeah, it'd be,
Yes.
But the one prior, the music store,
on number 8.
is that city-owned now?
Slide 8, or, so it's like F is owned by the city,
Okay, yeah.
and it has been boarded up. Yes, as of this week.
Who owns the billboards? The billboards that are coming out of here?
Of where?
There's a blue one.
The one on, was it slide 4? Let me see.
Are there any other comments
Keep
or
going.
questions on this?
That one.
This
Or are you still,
Um,
Mr. Nod, I'm sorry,
Probably copy them.
I'm sorry, I just was asking who owns that board.
I don't know.
That property owner.
So we charge our consultants with coming back with a larger inventory, having a committee meeting. What are the wishes of the board on this item?
And we need to contact the owners, like you mentioned, before we select.
Yeah, and I like the idea of it being open and then the board deciding this one,
So should we solicitate?
and matching the artist too, right, with the
So
proposal.
should we solicitate for both artists and owners, I guess is the question.
Well, I think it's the participation from the property first
Okay.
before we put that out. That's
So
the
then,
way I would see it.
are we okay with just targeting these areas that we have, or do we open it up for all of downtown?
Is there a time frame here?
Well,
Because I think that the art is something that we could get, if you want to see something going, we could get that
yeah,
going.
yeah, it's kind of on a fast track, Mr.
My only question would be, do we want the committee to take on contacting the business owners, which is absolutely fine, but having that as part of the evaluation process too, you know, the artist, you know, here are some areas and, you know, I think we want to have some, you know, hey, we got a commitment from the owner too, here we go. So whether we want to take that on or have the artist do that.
Well, the group talked about the consultants taking that on our behalf, on behalf of the board. And that's basically giving us more control over where we put the money.
Absolutely.
And Rick, did
I'm gonna get to you, Dr. Uribe, in a second.
and I don't know if Rick already answered this question. So all of these, you have not contacted?
No,
Okay.
we just we were asked to do an assessment, and so we just walked up and down.
So
and
maybe,
said, "This
so
makes
maybe the board wants to vote on, do you like these proposals? And these would be the first ones that the consultants could make contact with. If we get 5 out of these, this is pretty, what?
That's
20
exact,
properties?
that's what's before us, that's what he's bringing before us, you know, do you wanna define the space the way they're recommending it based on the meetings and discussions? And I think generally, I think there's, I don't wanna speak for anyone, I think there's a consensus to do so.
You have to, and in past mural projects that I've been involved, you have to identify the space first for the artist. That's gonna be the
Yes.
easier. So if you narrow it down to, let's say, 4 of them, and if 4 of them suggest that they want to, then that will be part of your RFP, or, you know, when you go, or your solicitation for artists, you can show these 4 items.
Right.
And then the artist gives you the most, you know, they give you what their vision is, and then the board can, you know, or the committee can select location and artist based on
Yes.
their request.
That's what the committee has arrived at, or the various meetings that I've been to, I think they're there. Thank you for summarizing it. So I'm gonna make this motion. I'll make a motion that we accept if you go back to the map, we accept the area for this program as defined in the map. And that we ask our consultants, charge our consultants with obtaining approval or agreement from the property owners within those marked spaces, or any other spaces within that mapping area. And then, after that's done, come back to the board. At that point, the board would then initiate a solicitation for the area, the spaces that it deems it wants to proceed with. And the only other thing that I would add to the motion is that we add 2 arts experts to that committee that'll work on this and bring back recommendations and score the proposals. That's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Mr. Heather, Mr. Martinez. Any additional discussion, comments? Before we take the vote, I want to hear from Dr. Uribe, who I kind of skipped. Dr. Uribe?
Just out of curiosity, wondering if there's a theme, there's something in common from these murals? I mean, is this something that you are considering, as in, what is the?
The
not
criteria, you
Yeah,
know,
but what is the message out there for the community? I think it would be good to think about it. It doesn't have to be all historical, but, I mean,
Yeah.
welcoming, happy, I don't know. It's just a curiosity. I think it's worth thinking about it, because
Yes,
when you
absolutely.
have
So between now and the next meeting, I think it would be good. Give us your feedback on that. Like I said, I came up with an idea and it was a bad one. So I'm the last one to like create that concept of what should be we put on a wall. But I think that once the solicitation is out, we talked about what guides we would tell folks that would be interested. Like, how many do we think we would fund? Like, if be interested, are we gonna fund a $50,000 mural? Well, most of us would say no. We wanna fund various levels of murals, right, with cost. So I agree with you. I think charging, and I don't know, I'm not an arts expert. I don't know if you want to restrict an artist to certain themes. It may not be, it may be something that you don't want to do and let them come back with. I mean, the city has a very good, in my opinion, in what they've used before, where you don't have anything that's offensive, right? And offensive now is very subjective. So all of these things, I think, need to be part of that, how we craft the solicitation. Just thinking, in terms of process, but I don't know, for an artist, do you want to be limited to certain themes or, but, I mean, send us those feedbacks and, you can send them to any one of us here or directly to Rick and the Able City team. But thanks, that's a good comment.
I mean, I'm just thinking, it might be welcome versus the anguish about life type of mural, right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I
I'm
mean-
with you.
So if you're walking up of that mural of the wall of La Posada, like, what should that be? I mean,
Right.
depends on the artist.
Right, right.
What should it be? Visionary,
Something
historical?
Visionary.
What should it be? Like I said, that's probably for other people to answer that. But thanks for that input.
I would like to see, and I've spoken with Dr. Deeb about this, some whimsy, just some whimsy and just some fun, not, like you said, not contemplating the ways of the world, just something that's fun colors,
Happy place.
something that's inviting and fun. Mr. Solis,
Everything's
so
gonna
if
be
you
an
could-
improvement.
If you could show the trash cans where along San Agustin, right there, yeah. So in other cities, they've taken stuff like this and they've created art around this
The
so that,
existing.
to make the trash cans look fun.
Yeah.
And,
Like me.
and they do that with electrical
right.
units and they've done some fun stuff on Zaragoza in front of the outlet mall with those transformers that they
Oh,
put down
yeah.
there. They didn't paint all of them, but they have put some fun, some
They do
nice
that
art
too
on
in
some
street
of them.
art, with street art or street, actually pavement art too. So there was a hot dog that
It's still there, yeah.
It's still there, so I commissioned that art to get there. There's nothing, and the ghost, the artist, did something else at one of the bars in one of the alleys. And I said, well, we'll do something fun, pick a place. So he picked that place, and he put that hot dog. It's
Yeah.
like fun.
It's
It's
cool.
like,
Yeah.
I like it. It's cool.
and it was super inexpensive for him to do that too. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. We need more of that.
Yeah, so we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None, motion passes. Thank you very much. Discussion with possible action is the next item, 11, related to making street parking style recommendations to the city of Laredo for parking spaces around the Laredo Center for the Arts Square. So we've discussed this before, and you all agreed that we would come back with an item that would make it official for us to send it to the city manager and the city council and the council member. So there's been some work, additional work that's been done to show us, to get us to this drawing. Appreciate that, Edward and Rick, everybody involved. Edward, go ahead.
Yep, again, so, we kind of tidied up an exhibit here and did a little more research and work on this to kind of confirm what we can end up getting. I'll kind of zoom in here a little bit, everybody can see that. The colors don't really show very well on the big screen here.
We can see them on the
see
monitor.
'em? Okay.
Edward, yeah.
Let me zoom out a little bit. We color coded it, kind of important because you go out there today and there's a lot of color on the curb and each color has a very important purpose. So what we did here is we kind of looked at, so first thing we did is we went through and kind of investigated the four blocks again, right? The 4 streets. I'm gonna start here on the north side. This is the location of the Plaza Theater right now. So here, what you see in red, and you'll see red mainly on the turning corners. What you see in red is currently painted no parking fire lane. And so those are areas that obviously at the corner, nobody parks, but it serves 2 purposes from what we discussed this with the fire department on Friday when we met. It serves a purpose, obviously, fire doesn't want to have any vehicles park in there. or attempting to park there. And secondly, it serves as a, traffic division can come and ticket somebody if somebody does park there. If there wasn't anything painted that said no parking, you'd be surprised. People would try to park. So we went through very carefully and kind of noted all of these areas. So mainly at the intersections, you'll see them there. Here in front of the Plaza Theater, there's a little bit of a kind of an island bump out in the Plaza Theater that's there. It's all painted, no parking, fire lane. You do have some fire hydrants. I'll kind of zoom in here. We've got them noted. There's a fire hydrant right here just adjacent to the Plaza Theater. So the curb in front of there is striped red, so you can't park. We've got a couple of loading zone areas that we've denoted here in yellow. So you've got a loading zone adjacent to the plaza. There's a loading zone here on the south side. So this is the Center for the Arts block. There's a loading zone here on the south side. Over here on the east side of the property, this is kind of the main entrance to the Center for the Arts. So they've got a little loading zone area that you can't park. And then you've got some police parking. And then again, you can see here, for whatever reason, the red extends past the intersection corner turnaround. So we've noted all that. So I just kind of wanted to explain that a little bit. And currently what you have is you've got parallel parking on this side of Flores, and you've got parallel parking right now on this side of Hidalgo. So looking at our analysis of the whole area, we believe that we can add 45-degree angled parking on this side of Hidalgo Street. And in doing so, I'll zoom in a little bit, we currently have 8 existing parallel parking spaces. There's 7 existing parallel parking spaces, and there's actually 1 ADA accessible parallel parking space right over here. So by doing angled parking, we can get 13 total spaces, which would be 12 parking. So we go from 7 to 12 regular parking, and then we keep the 1 ADA space. There is a curb right here that's cut out, that's at grade, so that the parallel parking can currently access the Laredo Center for the Arts block. So we just thought it'd be ideal just to keep that ADA space there. So on this side, if we restripe, we can gain 5 additional spaces. And on this side, if we restripe, we go from 6 parallel parking to 10 angled parking. So we can gain 4 additional spaces. Looking on here, if we keep the parallel spaces are 8 feet wide typically. So you'd have an 8-foot wide space. You'd have almost 16 feet of aisle driving space. And then the 45-degree angled parking space would require a perpendicular distance of 19 feet, 1 inch just about. So this 16-foot aisle space, we went back and I went back through and did some research on angled parkings and kind of how they're done. And a lot of guidelines kind of talk about 15 feet as being kind of what they call a normal use aisle space when you have angled parking. And where that normal use aisle space comes into play is, I guess the way I attribute it is, do you have a high turnover piece of property like maybe an H-E-B or a Walmart, right? So people are coming in and moving out, in a bunch of the spaces almost all day long. Versus, the other extreme would be a very low turnover, would be you have angled parking at a business, right? So you come into work at 8 o'clock, everybody parks, nobody moves all day, right? And then at 5 o'clock, everybody leaves. And then the normal would be kind of a hybrid in between, where you have people that may park maybe an hour or 2 or 3 and come and go. So 15 seems to be the ideal aisle space that kind of industry standard talks about for normal use. So we're trying to respect that particular space. So again, here we have 16 feet, almost 16 feet. And then here on the Hidalgo side, it's almost just the same. We have 15.8 feet, so almost 16 feet also. My opinion, we believe this can work. You would end up gaining 9 spaces. And these are basically the only two sides that we believe that that'll work. And as you can see here, we've kind of noted the existing street from face of curb to face of curb is 43 feet right now. Over on the Hidalgo Street side, it's almost 43 feet. It's about 42.9 feet from our measurements. But you get to the Lincoln side, and Lincoln is narrower. It's 39 feet. 39 feet wouldn't lend itself to have the angled parking and the 15-foot aisle, so we don't believe it'd be good to do that as an angled parking. And this Lincoln Street side, quite active. You've got a little area here painted yellow. This is a driveway for the dumpster. You know, the solid waste is over here for Center for the Arts, so you've got to leave that open. So this side, you see, there's one space here, and there's some striping, and then two spaces, and you have a loading zone, and then two spaces, so it's kind of sporadic. I think it'd be hard to get. And then you come to the east side, which is San Agustin, and it's even narrower. San Agustin currently is about 34 feet from curb to curb, so it wouldn't lend itself to do angled parking. And same thing here, you've got 4 parking spaces for the police substation that's here on the corner, and then you've got a loading zone in the middle, and you've got a fire here, so there's a lot of striping going on there. So that's a quick summary
Questions or comments
of
for
that
Edward?
here. So we've noted here in the middle, 51 existing, going to 60 proposed. You can gain 9 spaces if you do that. I'll zoom out a little bit.
Board members, any questions or comments for Edward?
Do you think the 9 spaces are worth all of that work?
Personally, I think any additional spaces downtown is good, you know. I mean, that's a call, I think, on the traffic department. I mean, you know, you want to get into the weeds a little bit, is you do the angled spacing, and we've had this discussion before, you know, those parallel parking spaces are metered. So if you do the angled spacing and you add 9 spaces where you're adding some additional meters, the current meters don't line up. The current meters are lined up for parallel parking, so they may not line up for the angled parking, so you might have to relocate some of those meters. I don't know the exact cost to all of that. I think that's a decision for the city to see if it's worth doing. But if you want my personal opinion, any additional parking in downtown, if we can be creative and find some areas to park, I'm all for it. I think, you know, I'm a big proponent of finding more spaces to park. That's just me.
Any comments?
So, Mr. Chair, procedurally, how would we go about this? Is this something that we would present to the city council? Have asked the city council, counselor, to present this for us?
I think if there is an urgency to do it that way, yes, I think that would be one way to do it. The other is to give the traffic department one last opportunity to you know, approve it or disapprove it through the city manager. But it's really, I'm gonna lean on the council member, you know, if she's good with it and she feels that this is what we want to do. I mean, we've vetted this here 3 times, you know, and we think this is good for the area. You know, I think everybody's nodding heads here, so.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Would the TERS be able to allocate any funding for it if in the past that has been a concern by the department or the city? Maybe if you were to allocate some funding for this improvement around that, maybe that would be also, you might get a quicker response.
I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't entertain that if that's something we want to achieve.
I agree. I mean, if we're trying to, one of the problems that traffic had with this is the parallel parking behind the dive-in parking. And when a car's backing up, you know, they'll hit. I personally don't think that's the issue. I think angled like that, they wouldn't have that problem.
Well, and here too, not so long ago, we heard the traffic department come and tell us that they have the least traffic they've ever seen downtown. They want to take traffic lights down. So, you know, I mean, we were here and we heard that. So I don't mean to, you know, downplay the issue, but we heard that. So I think this is appropriate. It'll give more spaces. If there's tenants at the Center for the Arts, it'll give more spaces for their guests that are coming in, and also for staff that's using those spaces. So I would
we would propose it with all this the parking spaces.
Yes, I would make the motion that we send this both to the council member and the city manager, and then, they can make a decision of whether they move it ahead. And if there is a cost associated with the improvement, that it be brought back for this board to entertain at that time. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Mr. Castillo. Any additional discussion?
Yeah, I would like to see this plan shared with the acting business improvement district for the city, for the downtown area.
Absolutely. We'll get that to him. Chief?
I was gonna say, I don't think we'll have any issues with it, but I was just gonna ask that if we have any meetings with traffic, if we could be included.
Okay,
Like I said, I don't think we'll have any issues, but just so that, we can be a part of.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure Edward will make that happen. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any final comments? Then we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye of the item.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Not hearing any against. All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Any, did I do it twice? Three times.
We voted
Thank
three
you.
times.
All right, motion
Three
passes.
times has it just happened?
I know, it's like, I was trying to read this thing
Could I just get
last
some?
item. Oh, you want to go
Just
back?
quick clarification. So did you want me, if we set up a meeting with traffic, you want me to discuss this with traffic, or are we just gonna, kind of share it with council and city manager?
I think at that
first,
point,
or
let's
however
give
y'all
it
want
to
do it?
management, Edward, at this point. I think if they need us, they can reach out to us and include us.
Sure, absolutely. We'll share this with everybody, and then they can go from there.
Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you.
Good.
I would like to, I would propose that we start, maybe Mr. Choa can start including because someone's gonna need to manage all of these improvements. It's that we could begin to start reaching out to the Business Improvement District I think there's 5 members on there, so that they could start being included into what's happening here. I know Dr. Uribe works with them, and Mr. Haynes used to be the president, chair. What was your title? Thank you for being here, but Mr. Haynes used to be the chair of that Business Improvement District, and he could probably speak to how important it is to include them in all these meetings.
Okay, great, that sounds good. I think as you coordinate those meetings, if you could invite that group. Who's the representative? Who should be?
Was it president, chair, is Rene Gonzalez right now?
Okay. All right, we'll include them. All right, the last item here is discussion with possible action regarding invoices submitted by Able City, and KCI Technologies as presented. Those are in your packets.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? They're not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None motion passes. Motion to adjourn, it's 4:17. Is there a second? It's been moved, seconded by Mr. Castillo.
I had a question.
Question?
About number 8, what did that actually mean? Update this is to go out for procurement for the,
We didn't do anything with that item. Number 8 or 9?
Aye.
9? The procurement one?
oh yeah, number 9, it was number 9.
We didn't do anything with that
You
because,
approved to use some other old system.
no, we didn't take any action on that item because we didn't hear back yet from the procurement department. So we moved through that item.
So,
We didn't do anything with it. Okay. Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None. Motion passes. We're adjourned. 4:18. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Chief, for staying through the meeting. Everybody, Miss Dr. Uribe, Mr. Haynes.